Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night with a brand new show of the Tex-Trek podcast. And I am flying solo right now. That's because I have some pre recorded goodness with a lot of Tex-Trek regulars. So I'm about to debut some content that we recorded for Tex-Trek 300 a couple weeks ago that we did not have time for, but I'm about to reveal it to you now. I see there's already several people watching in the live audience, so I'm going to go ahead and get the show started. I'm Fatheree, and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 301st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about Miss Taylor's first time Trek takes. So for those who do not know, my partner Taylor is watching all of Star Trek right now for the first time in release order. And we've been having a lot of fun documenting her hashtag Taylor's Star Trek mission. She came up with that name, I believe, not me. But it's a good name, and people should be following us on socials because it's been a lot of fun getting her reactions as a person watching for the first time in 2024. And what's particularly cool is that she wanted to do it in release order. So we actually started with the original series. We watched all of the original series, all of the animated series. We're currently working our way through DS9 and Voyager, and eventually we'll be in modern Star Trek in a few weeks. And it has been tremendously fun. So I have a conversation that Starfleet Sohail, Rachel, Dave, Aaron, and myself participated in with Taylor, just asking her questions about her Trek journey and what did she think of the Trek that she's seen so far, which is about half of the entire franchise at the time of recording. I'm looking forward to reliving that and re-experiencing that conversation myself, as well as sharing it with all of y'all. So just let me take care of a little bit of quick housekeeping first, and we will get that started. But I do need to give a huge thank you and shout out to the wonderful Tex-Trek Patreon supporters. So thank you so much. Starfleet Sohail, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Daw, Geek Filter, Quark Spar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, Joel Vallis, Benjinium, Arthur Lamoureux, our associate producer Chris Garris, and our anonymous supporters. But a big thank you and welcome to Chris, who is in the live chat now on YouTube. But we will be celebrating, if you're checking us out live on Friday, it's going to be tomorrow on Saturday. We will be celebrating with our patrons during our monthly Patreon watch party tomorrow, September 21st. We're actually starting at 4:30 p.m. Central. We normally do these at 3:30, but we had to push this one back, so sorry about that. But we're watching The Man Trap, the TOS episode that started it all way back on September 8th, 1966, or September 6th if you're Canadian. Canadian Star Trek Day, September 6th. But yeah, in honor of Star Trek Day, we will be watching our franchise premiere episode, The Man Trap. So make sure that you have plenty of salt in your system, and if you want to partake in the monthly watch parties, please join the Tex-Trek Patreon. You can come in at whatever tier you're able to help out at, but as little as $2 a month, we get you into those monthly watch parties, and it's a fun group that shows up for those. I see Jill in the live audience excited for the Man Trap. She says that is the first episode she saw on first run. So she was watching September 8th, 1966. How cool is that? So that's the anniversary we're celebrating, Jill. So very good. And just a little bit of quick news. There has been an announcement that there will be a Star Trek Universe presentation at New York Comic Con. That's going to be on, I think that's the October of 19th. Or, I'm sorry, the Saturday, October 19th. Yeah, so that's going to be 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on October 19th. But they are promising to show off some Star Trek Lower Decks stuff for the final season, which will be premiering less than a week after that. So I'm sure that at New York Comic Con, they're probably going to screen the first 2 episodes of the final season. And there's also going to be some Section 31 stuff. So I think we might get a longer trailer than what we got at San Diego, and maybe some more details like a release date, maybe more casting, stuff like that. So we'll do a live stream that weekend, probably later on the 19th after the panel, after the dust settles, and we'll give it a couple hours to get our bearings and recover from whatever crazy stuff is announced. And then we'll do a live stream breaking it down. So be sure to be subscribed to the YouTube channel because that'll be exclusive to YouTube. Podcast listeners, if you haven't checked out those streams, they're a lot of fun. We always have a good time breaking down whatever big news comes out of the convention. So if you do listen on a podcast platform, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on that type of stuff. But with all of that out of the way, I'll shut up and bring out Miss Taylor, who will share her experience and her first time Trek takes with all of us, and also we'll have some familiar voices to the Tex-Trek crew with Starfleet Sohail, Dave, Rachel, and Aaron, and here they are. Howdy, howdy. So welcome, everyone. I have a wonderful panel of Tex-Trek regulars introducing Miss Taylor to the Tex-Trek podcast audience. So Miss Taylor, my partner, who I've been showing all of Star Trek to in release order. We've been chronicling that journey on social media, hashtag Taylor's Star Trek mission, but we are halfway through. We've watched all of the Star Trek from 1966 to we're actually in 1996, in like the middle of 96. So the first 3 decades of the 6 decades of our franchise we have covered, and I have Dave, Aaron, Rachel, and Starfleet Sohail here to ask Taylor some questions. So everyone say hi and welcome aboard to Taylor.
Hi and welcome aboard.
Hi.
Thanks,
Taylor on the bridge.
How are you doing, Taylor? Are you okay?
Yes.
If you need us to rescue you from the marathon.
I'm like a little nervous, but I'm excited. Like I definitely am nervous about having only seen most of this. Well, most of it only once, especially the episodes. So I may take some recollection from you guys to to strike a memory if you have specific questions.
No one's gonna yell at you if you don't remember like the name of a character or which episode, which planet. Yeah, Sohail
This is actually really cool though, because for us it's very rare to have somebody who doesn't know hardly anything, because we're all like more in depth than a lot of the regular Star Trek fans.
I've always been the casual. There's lots of stuff y'all know that I don't. So
I would say it's nice to have someone who's just casually into it, because I feel like I either meet people who are really into it or someone who's like, "What do you really like?" And I'm
the
like,
fact that you're already at where you're at sounds like you're starting to get really into it. So that's really good. I thought it was funny when you said you're up to 1996. That's the year I graduated high school. So I feel like, cool. I know where you're at now.
It's funny you said that, because my thought was, you've gotten to the years I was actually alive.
That's basically where we were at. Like I was born in 95, so like so like this is like our 1 year in. Every time we like pass April, I'm like, oh, I'm 2 now or whatever.
Yeah, when we were watching, I would point that out. I would even mention y'all sometimes. We were in like the animated series, and I would be like, okay, like Aaron and Dave are alive now, and then when we get to Star Trek 4, I'm like, this is the first Star Trek movie since I was born, and then
I have to my high school.
I'd have to do a little
here. We're like
I'd have to do a little searching to remember which one it was, but there's a Deep Space Nine episode where the first day it aired is like the day I was born.
Oh wow!
Oh, I wonder if there's any Star Trek episode on the day I was born.
Mine was a little off. The closest one for me was like May 1st or 2nd, I think, of 95.
Yeah,
it was just a tiny bit off.
And it's also weird because Deep Space Nine was read in syndication, and I do know that. So like, it aired somewhere for the first time on November 8th, 1993.
There were no episodes coming out when I was born. It was just between Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4.
Just
between two movies.
To make up for that,
there were no episodes when I was born either, 1978. But on May 11th, which is my birthday, TNG's The Host came out that day.
Nice.
I don't know if anything came out on my birthday.
Cool. 1990.
Well, no, on my actual birthday, no, for sure. There was no Star Trek in 1970. So.
But I didn't know when Taylor started just showing curiosity to Star Trek, wanting to watch it. I kind of suggested to her a few different starting points, and I knew she was a big fan of animation. Like Taylor, you like the other Star franchise, like some of the animated shows there, right? Like
primarily the animated shows. Like when people are like, "Oh, you like Star Wars?" I'm like, wait, no, I only like Rebels and Clone Wars. Like,
that's an interesting,
They're very good too.
They're good shows. So
I thought about trying to get her in on Prodigy, and she saw me like watching Prodigy once because I rewatched Prodigy a billion times to try to help it in the algorithms. We found a home for season 2, so our work paid off, but. I thought like maybe Prodigy would be a good one for her, or like Strange New Worlds is very like new audience friendly, but she was like, no, I want to like start at the beginning with the original series, and so when I tossed that on, she was like, why are we watching like these remastered effects? Like this isn't how they would have made it in the 60s. So I busted out the Blu-ray set, and we watched all of the original series with the 1960s unaltered effects.
That was one of my questions already answered. Like, did you?
Yeah, I was really adamant about that.
There was someone I watching on TikTok that I don't know that he ever got through all of the original series, but he was starting with it. And then he was like, wow, these effects are like really holding up better than I thought they would. And we had to be like, those are not the effects. They're like not terrible recreations of them, but those are not the effects from the 60s.
Yeah. So Mike Okuda and their team did a really great job of trying to like, okay, what could we have done in the 1960s if we had like an unlimited budget?
Mm-hmm.
So sort of if we want to dive in on TOS, I have a question for Taylor. I think I just from talking to you previously, I think you were able to plug in pretty well to those effects and the general aesthetics, but do you have like a background that connects you to that in like production or something?
Not officially, but I did go to art school, and my degree is in art and fine arts. So a lot of background in art history too. So I have always been interested in like set design. My high school did a really amazing like theater program, and I helped a lot with set design with that when I was in high school. And I've always kind of been interested in that kind of thing, watching TV and watching movies. So I don't know. I really appreciate the whole scale, like even from 1960s, like up to now. Like, I mean, I love singing in the rain, and so I think that's kind of like leads a lot into Star Trek. It has kind of a similar vibe in some of the sets. So I like to think about set design as an artist, and that's something I've always been interested in was costume design and set design, and like how would I do it if I was making this. And so that's what I really liked about in the original series was like, if I really enjoyed something, I'd say, well, how would I create that? Yeah. And so that was really important to me. I wanted to see like what they were doing in the 60s, because as we're progressing through Star Trek, I wanted to see their special effects get better with technology, but using what they had at the time. And I think it held up really good in my opinion. There were a couple weird ones, but most of it was really good. So
what's a weird one?
Oh, no, I don't know specifics like that, like right off the top of my head.
Oh, remember the one that we had a lot of fun making fun of though was in Cat's Paw when they reverted back to their puppet form.
Oh, yeah, the feathery
Yeah. Almost like the aliens from the Muppets, yip 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 yip, but like tiny.
Totally.
After rewatching the original series recently to do the podcast that a lot of you guys have been on or have been on several episodes of them, but I feel like Star Trek the original series production and design is still unparalleled in many ways by any of the modern shows. I feel like that because whenever they even when I don't know, to me it's just so unique and it has such a strong aesthetic that stays in your memory, like that's
Definitely.
TOS.
And it doesn't look like anything else from the 60s that I can think of.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Like it
what
has,
I like is that
like I love the mid-century modern like vibe of it. That are still like furniture pieces that I have that are like I have some of my grandparents' furniture from the 60s. That I'm like, if you made this a different color, you could throw this in a Star Trek like original series set.
I think what's really cool too is that they didn't have the budget to do certain things, so they didn't try and hammer that like I'm going to make this work no matter what. They found like lighting and just like really sparse sets, like what was the episode with the Western town that was like
Spectre of the Gun.
Oh yeah,
yes,
exactly.
thank you. Just stuff like that. It was just like that was kind of just really clever.
I mean, if you like want to like compare it to something like Doctor Who at the time, Doctor Who's effects have aged way worse than Star Trek's have.
And they tried to do a version where they added updates, and it didn't look good either.
Yeah.
Do you like TOS? What's the coolest stuff for you?
For like so far?
Yeah. Would you say overall
in the original series?
Yeah.
I'm confused by the question. I'm sorry.
I'm just a very broad question. Were you generally pretty happy with TOS, the original Star Trek series? Sorry.
Yeah.
And if so, what were like the kind of just standout cool things for you? Just real broad.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the storylines. I'm trying to think of like specifics. I didn't have time to review like all of my all of the titles or whatever before. But I liked a lot of the aliens and I liked a lot of the star travel, like okay, we're going to a new planet and like introduce like I guess the first contact situations and how is this Federation like introducing themselves to these new cultures and stuff. I obviously am like a really big Spock fan. I feel like that's got to be like a very, very common like love character because he's amazing.
I don't hear too often from people like I like Star Trek, but not Spock.
Yeah, I really love
someone.
Spock.
I always feel like
I feel like that is someone's favorite character is Spock. It's like one of those opinions. Like, isn't that everyone? It's like that's a lot of people's opinion. I was like, yeah, but it's also correct. I don't know. Like,
Taylor, who did
he got the most fan mail from all the audience.
Taylor, who did you like other than Spock?
Well, I'm obsessed with Bones as well. I love McCoy. I think he's super fun. I love his like sassy little attitude and commentary, and his banter with Spock is so fun. Like when they have like their like pretend hate for each other. I think that's really enjoyable. So I liked a lot of the character interactions in the original series. I was always really curious like how they were gonna dig their way out of whenever they got into that episode.
So you were like in the moment with it. You weren't like, oh, this is kind of a dated old show, and I'm not.
Well, I did have moments where I was like, oh, this is bad, or like it was dated poorly, or, like, and I think that's common though. Like, in the 1960s, they're doing the best they can with the information they had. So sometimes you have to like
sassiness could be a little racist.
Yes, or sexist. There's that episode where he slaps the pregnant lady, or she had just given birth.
Oh yeah,
Friday's child. Yeah,
I turned to Steven and I was like, "Oh, like my dude, he just slapped a woman." So that was a little bit a lot for me. But again, like I don't know. You just kind of take it with a grain of salt, and you just have episodes you don't like, and you just keep
like
watching.
any show, I suppose.
But overall, like you really enjoyed like the presentation, like the character of Kirk, and you thought that Kirk was a really good, well-realized character, despite
Yeah.
some moments that didn't age well with him. But overall, like in general, you were really on board with what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I liked
Kirk's
a
my
lot of
favorite.
his ethical situations with Kirk were really interesting. I feel like he gets more of those storylines than like Spock, where his is more like the humanness and the emotionness of Spock, whereas like with Kirk, it's always, is this bad? Is this right? And
Right, the more like the indecision and like having to make like the tough choices. And
Was that at all what you expected of Kirk, or were you surprised by that?
it's about what I expected. I had seen the Kelvin movies before this, so I kind of had like an idea of like the dynamic between like like what Kirk was gonna be and who Spock was kind of gonna be. I know it's like totally, it's similar in a way, but
He's a little more headstrong in the Kelvin movies.
totally, yeah. He has a little bit more of
the
an
Kelvin
aggressive
movies,
adventurousness to him.
I think the Kelvin movies are like a distillation of all of TOS. They have little bits
Yeah.
from every thing, especially that first one. You have a lot of references, and then they turn them on their head. Well, now you know like how things were different
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. Yeah. Do you, what would you say that like from watching TOS, the overall message of Star Trek felt like for you after you watched it?
For me, it really just felt like advancement in technology and adventure. So I think I mentioned this to Steven many times, is like when we're watching the original series and even into TNG, there's so many things like technology advancements in the show that we actually have that are commonplace now. So I was telling him like, when Picard is like in his ready room, sorry to like go over to TNG, but there was this specific memory where he tells like the computer to increase the illumination in the room, and I was like, we do that now. Like we increase our bar light, and we through Alexa or through Google or whatever. And it was, so that's kind of what I took away. Like at the end of the original series, there's so many things that are like advanced in Star Trek, but they're actually realized now. So I was thinking like how inspiring Star Trek would be for like scientists, of the time, and like, oh, how could we do that? Like, how could we build a rocket to do this? Or how could we have a computer that can do that? Like, you have like this creative like writing that's like helping like bring these ideas out into the world, and then someone is watching Star Trek maybe and gets inspired to like go down that technological route.
This year, maybe by next year, we're going to be able to talk to our computers the way they do in Star Trek and just say, computer, open a Word doc and write a letter, and it'll just do the things that you ask it to do. It's insane that that's coming. Going back to TOS for a second, the communicator became the template for the cell phone, and then later in TNG, the pad became the template for mobile devices that we use today. It's wild.
Yeah.
I would say my favorite thing of them almost getting technology correct is the piles of iPads. You're like,
totally.
I
have 4 iPads. It's not that far off.
Why do you have 4 iPads?
Taylor, one
I
of
imagine
the things,
a lot of drawing.
One's drawing, one's something else, one's like in the kitchen. Just like stuff that
Taylor, one of the things that stood out to me was early on was after we watched the Carbomite maneuver, which we watched right after Where No Man Has Gone Before, because we were doing TOS in production order. But you said that like the ethics really stood out to you, something like kind of unique, that like they spend so much time on these moral quandaries. And so when you said that on like the second episode of the original series we watched, that was when I was like, oh, like it must like really like it must be clicking with you.
Yeah.
Curious, mostly for TOS, but any of the others too. Is there anything that you were surprised aged well? Because I feel like sometimes when I watch old stuff and I was like, oh, that wasn't offensive in the way I thought it might be.
Yeah, I feel like in the original series, maybe not as much. It's also like we finished watching the original series in April, so it's not as fresh on my mind. So I do feel like I'm a little bit not doing it justice. But lately we've been watching DS9 a lot, and I feel like there's a ton in DS9 that's just like incredible already. Like I'm shocked and really loving it. And same for Voyager. Like I think there's so many, I don't know, there's so many isms, but like sexism and like homophobia that's like not happening that I was totally expecting. and I think that's really cool. I don't, in the original series, I'm really struggling to think if there's anything specific.
I think maybe just having like the woman first officer in the Menagerie parts 1 and 2, as short lived as that was,
Yeah.
but that was kind of a rare thing, I think. But
Totally.
For me, one of the revelations was how Kirk. I had this like pop culture view of him because they always used to do these like montages of him making out with all the leading ladies, and he definitely is, a very like friendly space explorer, if you will. But I was surprised when I watched it again now, like recently, how wrong that kind of portrayal is of Kirk. There's so much more to him than just that he likes the ladies.
Yeah, he's not just like a horn dog. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Did you feel that way too about Kirk, or did you have that same impression from like the?
I
Coven
rolled
film?
my eyes a lot, at Kirk, especially like with the ladies. I was like, oh, here we go. She's blonde and has blue eyes. I thought she's a love interest. Like, that was pretty much every
Oh
episode.
God, I forgot about that.
Sometimes I feel like when I watch TOS, I have to remind myself. I was like, that's a product of like that's how TV was in the '60s.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it was super episodic, and like you had to bring in your guest star, and that guest star was like, how are we gonna work her in? Well, we'll have her make out with our attractive lead. Like,
Yeah.
He definitely. I feel like my biggest thing that I thought was like, oh, he's always doing it to save the ship or something. Like he manipulates people in general. Like he doesn't care about anyone else but the crew and the ship. Like he'll do anything it takes. And kissing a girl might
he'll
be what it
seduce
takes.
any woman to save his ship.
He'll seduce any woman to save his ship. Yeah.
And
not so
even worse
much.
than that, was like
I wonder
in the
why the Enterprise
episode.
gets in danger.
Worse
Sorry,
than
go
just
ahead.
that, it's like even in the episode Miri when he's like manipulating this child and
Yeah, that
she's
one-
like
that did
coming
not
of
age
age.
well.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
I was really worried. I was like, please, like
There's
she's a teenager. Like let's hope that this doesn't escalate.
Isn't that a little bit like Kess though? Because she was a teenager, but she actually was many decades old, right?
Yeah,
So
she's
she's
like
been
20. She's like
Yeah.
she just turned 2 in what we're in, so
yeah.
she's like in the 20s, but still,
She
yeah.
turns
For
2
some
in
reason I thought
season 2 of
Miri's
Voyager.
stretched out. No. I'm talking about Miri. Well, like the
Oh.
girl. I don't think she really was a teenager, wasn't she? Like
But they
Right, she
30,
were
50 years old at that point or something.
Right, Miri would have been several decades old.
Okay.
Okay,
Or
sorry, I
maybe
heard you say
centuries,
Cass,
perhaps,
and I.
perhaps.
So yeah, no, I was like Kess, I guess. Is what I've seen,
gotcha.
that
It
conversation.
would
Gotcha.
be the opposite of Kess. It would be
Yeah.
slow
Yeah.
aging, not fast aging.
That's true.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah,
But it is
I don't
definitely
know. It was
uncomfortable from the optical perspective.
Yeah.
Like, she
Yeah.
still looks like a 12.
Oh, yeah, no, totally.
yeah, and they're
That
all
episode I always
acting
thought
like
was-
kids. So
Yeah, I know.
Well, that was
I-
that's the part I found weird. It's like they're living for so long. You think they kind of eventually would like create their own adulthood and like
Yeah.
figure that out as opposed to continually acting like children.
I compared that episode to the Lord of the Flies when we watched it. I was like,
Oh,
this
totally.
totally
Very
feels
much
like
so.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
But after
100%.
the original series, we went straight into the animated series, and I was really surprised that I knew like you had a lot of like a respect for like animation. I knew like you wouldn't mind watching like the older '70s animation. I was surprised that you, as much as you loved the original series, you said that you liked the animated series even more.
I did. I like
Wow.
the bright colors so much, and I like the concise storyline. Like I felt like some of the original series episodes were too long, and I thought could get boring. No offense, someone's gonna come for me. But the
You're not
animated
wrong.
series has like that shorter storyline, and I think it actually benefited some of those Trek stories to like really push it forward and keep it moving.
Yeah.
And
You
I
don't have
think
20 minutes of Kirk fighting a random person. You know, like
Yeah.
When
Oh my
Sohail was going through the original series, there were so many episodes I was on where I said like this would have been better as an animated series episode if they like cut the running time in half to tell
Yeah.
the story. It would have been much better.
Yeah, you did. say
Yeah.
that a lot.
And then you don't have to worry about the special effects because you can draw everything. So
Right,
you
right.
have
Yeah.
so much more range. Because the first episode, they have the ship that's an organic ship. And that blew my mind. Like the very first episode. And I was like, oh, I already love this so
Totally.
much more. Like you have so much more freedom to like, show these insane, other cultures and other technology that you couldn't do at the time in the original series.
Yep.
Yeah, and you come.
Do you have any like sort of preconceptions about TAS when you went into it? Like, have you heard, other people saying, "Oh, the animation was janky" or whatever? It's like
No.
that's kind of my wheelhouse. So that's
Yeah, no, I didn't hear anything. To be fair, at the time, like I wasn't even in any of the Star Trek Facebook groups or
Right.
listening to Steven as
Yeah.
much.
You had no prejudices. Like
No.
none of the fandom prejudices had.
yeah, that's
like,
actually really cool.
You haven't been
That's-
told like the things you're supposed to dislike. So
Yeah. I kind of envious of that because I didn't have that through a lot of Star Trek where I was like, because I got into Star Trek by like randomly catching like episodes on Spike TV, and then like would go seek out things and people were like had opinions already, and then I would see those opinions before I would get to those episodes.
Yeah.
I do warn her, by the way, if we're watching something that is kind of like infamously considered a very bad, like, when we get to like the Spock's Brains type episode, I do warn her, like, okay, Star Trek 5 has a bit of a reputation, so just so you know.
I think that's good. I do famously have a list of here's episodes like it's specifically for TNG that you can skip, and a couple episodes have like trigger warnings on them.
Yeah, valid.
For like
Code of
Spock's
Honor.
Code of Honor is the first episode out there that I say to skip.
Taylor, what do you think
Spock
of Code
brains
of Honor?
while it.
Remind me what happens in that one.
That is the one where
Lutan.
Tasha Yar has to fight that guy's wife on the
Lutan, he's like super.
The racist
Yeah.
episode.
Oh, that's like one of
Yeah.
the very first ones,
Yeah.
isn't it? Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
that was
yeah.
when you thought TNG was going to be like the most terrible thing ever. You were
I
like,
was really nervous.
It's,
I was so scared. I was
it's
like,
so unfortunate it's so early.
Yeah.
yeah. The first episode of TNG though was so long, and I was just like,
Encounter at
Okay.
Farpoint, yeah. Well,
Then-
Yeah.
and
an
it
hour
was
and a
kind of
half.
like back and forth. Like I don't know, it didn't feel very concise to me, and so I was kind of like, oh, is this like this show doesn't know what it's doing? Is like the first impression I got.
If you knew the background of that episode, that would make a lot of sense. So it's
Yeah.
like you are not incorrect.
Okay.
It's awesome to hear you say this without any other influence.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Yeah.
kinda
So
like what the
basically,
fans went
they-
through
It's
at the
so
time. It's like,
basically they had an hour episode and we're told you need to make it a half an hour, so they had to add another story add half an hour, they had to add another storyline to it.
Gotcha.
going back to the animated series, I'm curious, and you don't have to remember the name of the episode, you can just describe it, but what was what are a few of the most standout episodes from the animated series?
Okay, so I really love the Satan episode.
Yeah.
Magic
Oh,
Omegas
Too.
2.
That one was crazy. I was like, seriously, every time something happened, I was like, whoa, they really jammed so much into this episode. But it was so colorful and like fun. And I loved that Spock was so open-minded. Like, you're thinking that like this really logical character, like, is going to be like, no, like all this like magic and stuff is stupid, or that's not logical, like it's not real or whatever. And he's like the one who's on board first. And I was like pleasantly
It's
surprised.
logical for that universe,
Yeah.
Yeah, I seriously was like so impressed by that.
But that was, you pointed out how, like, you said Spock is very Sherlock Holmes. He's like, once you've eliminated the impossible, whatever
Yeah.
remains,
Yeah.
however
Yeah.
improbable, must be
Must be.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were quoting that before you heard Data or Spock quote
Yes.
Sherlock Holmes
Yes.
later in
That's
Star
amazing.
Trek.
I didn't
I-
know.
Yeah,
Cool.
that made me think of how like Nicholas Meyer looked at Star Trek and was like, "Oh, this Kirk guy is like Horatio Hornblower," without ever like reading anything of like Gene Roddenberry back in the '60s. Like, I'm going to create a character like Horatio Hornblower. It's like it was like you were able to like read the coding that they wrote in there. Like it translated and you picked up on it.
Yeah,
So that was
I
cool
I
to
thought it was
witness.
really good. The animated series was well written and well animated, and I loved the baby episode where they all shrank back into little babies.
the counterclock incident.
That one was so cute, and I loved the couple that took care of them. And that what were their names?
Robert
Admiral Robert April.
Sarah and
who's
Robert
the-
April. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
did they say it in the episode, right? That he's the first captain of the Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed like their chemistry and their sweetness as a couple. And it broke my heart when they decided not to stay young and have a second life. I really wish they would have, because I loved them so much and I wanted them to have
Robert decided for them. That was
Yeah.
the 170s issue that I had with it. I'm like, can you let your wife decide, baby?
yeah,
For
that's a
herself.
great point. Yeah.
But yeah,
See,
and,
that's so-
and there's a scene that was removed from that at the end, or somewhere in between, where basically Robert April mentioned something like, "How do you know that?" It's like, "Oh, I've been watching all of your exploits." Basically, like kind of like I've been watching TAS. You know, it's like, and he lists all these crazy things off. He goes, "Apparently, they all happened." You know, it's like great that they actually at the time realized that everything that happens to these characters seems kind of crazy from an outside viewpoint, even in universe.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of fun.
And it was fun to go through the animated series and go through your book as we were going through it, Aaron. So
Yeah.
we would,
Oh,
we would
we
flip through
did.
your
I,
book as
I
we
grabbed
were
it
watching.
because I know you're terrible at having it next to you when we're talking about it. So there we go.
We
I don't
did
carry it with me
every
everywhere.
single thing. It was so fun to go through that. I loved the fun facts section so much.
Don't tell Larry Nemeczek what we watched The Next Generation, and we only cracked open the
One time.
the companion like once or twice, but the animated series book is a lot prettier to look at. So we were flipping through.
We
that
wanted to
thing
make
like
it
crazy.
feel like you were watching the show itself. It was like,
Yeah.
I think the best compliment I ever got was like, it feels more animated than the show does. It's like,
Aw.
okay.
Yeah, I love seeing the character designs and the storyboarding in the book that you wrote.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really cool to include stuff like that. And it was cool to also have like the same information for each episode. Like you had the sections for each thing. I really loved that book. So
Thank you. Yeah,
Side-
we tried to make it where it's something you could just like have as you're watching and just sort of like, it wasn't ever meant to like sit down. I mean, you could read it straight through, but it's like, it's more of a go-to
Browse.
and peruse and browse. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Coffee
totally
table
how
book.
we used it. It was perfect.
Taylor, we haven't really talked about it much. We haven't talked about it in a long time, but Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the first movie. Just tell people how you felt about it overall.
I'm excited to hear about.
Okay. I think okay, so I remember watching it and being like, oh, this is really long and taking a really long time to get through the story, but I didn't hate it. Like I really enjoyed all of the long pans of like the Enterprise, and I felt like it was very I just couldn't stop thinking about the show having ended, and then the next time as a Star Trek fan that you're in the theater getting to see this. It's such a huge screen, and it made me really emotional when we were watching it because I was thinking about being such a huge fan and like sitting there and getting to see like this massive Enterprise on this huge screen, like in this slow pan, you know, and they're working on it, and Kirk and McCoy and Scotty are there, or I think it's Kirk and Scotty that are there,
Right.
and they're like looking at it. And I just thought how emotional that would be as like a huge fan, like this comeback, you know. So I
seems like in
really
general-
enjoyed that.
It seems like in general, Taylor, you're able to kind of project yourself back somewhat to the different eras these
Yeah.
were in and experience them a little bit as people actually did those times originally.
Yeah, I like to think about it in context. I think if I thought about it out of context, it would be harder to enjoy in some ways. Like just
Totally.
I think, you know, because these days we kind of have like everything binged through, and you don't really have to like sit and wait, or, you know, well, I guess we do for like some seasons take like 2 years to produce, but it's
Yeah.
still very, you know,
It's
just constant content
Yeah.
all the
Keep-
time. And so to think about it, you know, being in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s, you know, you're still having to wait a week for an episode or whatever, how many years for your movie, and you don't know like there's no spoilers, and I don't think the trailers were as like, you know, ecstatically exciting as they are today. So you really kind of, I think, are going in blind, and you're enjoying, I'm not that you're enjoying it more, but you're going in with more surprises, like there's
Yeah.
less to be
Yeah.
spoiled. But yeah, so I did like the motion picture. There were some things that were kind of cringy. I don't remember their names, so I'm sorry. But like,
Ilea and Decker.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's the only movie they're in,
Yep.
so kind of forgettable. But
I
you
did.
liked
I
Decker,
liked
though.
Decker.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
surprised how much you sympathized with him. You know, like Admiral Kirk coming to like
Oh.
boss him around.
Oh, I loved all of that. I loved seeing Kirk be the Badmiral, because we were making fun of all of these Badmirals on the original series, and all
Yeah.
these
Through the
times
hearts
that
of-
like that Kirk was so annoyed, and then he becomes one, and I was like, this is such a full
Yeah.
circle moment. Like he's so out of touch. Like he's
Oh my
like
gosh.
gone off the Enterprise for like 5 years or something, and like he's already just become what he used to despise because he's been off of it for so long. He's been out of the loop, kind of. And, you know, he's got this mentality that he knows everything and he's right. And, like, these young people don't know what they're doing or whatever. And then Decker has to correct him multiple times and, like, even tell him, like, oh, you're going the wrong way, like, in the ship.
Yeah.
So I thought that was all really good, humbling experience for Kirk that he needed.
As someone who's been the younger person in a workforce, I was just like, I relate to this more than I wish I did.
Yes, totally.
How did you feel about the kind of update to the Enterprise and all of the other kind of updates visually from what had been in TOS?
Obviously not very striking because I'm not thinking of anything specifically.
Well, the Enterprise, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, she changed like a lot, right? Like, they lost the
nacelles,
Christmas lights.
the
bizarre
Christmas
collectors.
party, the bizarre collectors, and they became different. Everything just became different. Like, I personally, that's my favorite configuration of the Enterprise.
Okay.
But I also like the Constitution class from the original series a lot. But yeah, that particular ship I thought just looked so future, like
and, you know, as somebody at the
yeah.
when it came out, we were talking about how like never had seen that before. It's like you've only seen it on television. The internet didn't exist, so you weren't always looking up the specs and like. I mean, yeah nerds had like the books and stuff, but there's no way to really kind of imagine that. And then you see that, and you can see a little person in scale. It just made the whole ship feel so much more real.
Yeah,
real,
yeah, for sure.
I think
Taylor,
Dave.
that ship fascination that some Trekkies do. Not really. I was just do you have like a favorite, Federation ship?
Okay,
or
there's
ship.
You care more about like the ship interiors, and we spend a lot of time talking about sets and a lot of time talking about wardrobes, but not so much the
favorite bridge
exterior ships.
Yeah, favorite bridges. No, I feel like we have similar things where I'm like, I like the ships.
Yeah,
I joke that I'm more into the relationships.
Ha.
So, like, yeah.
I did not mention this to her, by the way. Like, Taylor, you have to tell everyone, I did not say this to you ahead of time. You came up with this weird opinion on your own. But you like me, think that the Ambassador class design, the Enterprise C that Rachel Garrett commanded, that was a better design than the Galaxy class. And that should have been the hero ship of TNG. Should have looked like that and not like the Galaxy class.
Oh, the TNG ship is so ugly. I'm sorry.
I think Fatheree got to you.
Majel Barrett called it.
See, I told you. People would say that I told you to not like the ship.
Oh, it's so bad. Look how like that little tiny bottom that is. Like,
I think wrong. I get what you mean, but I have such nostalgia for the D because
the D. We all love the D. I love the D.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
But
the Enterprise D. Here we
nostalgia
go.
plays a role in every whatever Star Trek you grew up with is going to have like a strong hold. Yeah. So it is interesting to catch these in the more in the void as they are with Taylor. I think where you're just kind of experiencing them for the first time. And I think that's actually a totally legitimate opinion. We have to.
I was gonna.
And as far as like the Ambassador class goes too, have you seen the original Probert design, where they had a little bit more time as opposed to like it has a little bit more curves too. It feels a little bit more refined, but then they had like a week to build the Enterprise C, so they like made the struts just very angular and simple.
And I actually think the Ambassador class is a good looking ship. I honestly do.
I was gonna say what my actual favorite ship is, but I'm double checking you've gotten there. So that's
okay. Right. Well, I do like when the nacelles are higher, like in the original series and the Kelvin timeline. I like how the nacelles are like parallel and like up, like close to where the saucer is. I like that look better. I think it looks more sleek. And I think when they put that stuff down below for the TNG ship, that's the Ambassador class.
That one is the Galaxy class.
The Galaxy class one, yeah. I just think that doesn't look as streamlined, and it doesn't seem to be as like propulsion. Well, like I don't think it would like actually hold up very well at warp.
It doesn't look like it's balanced.
It's very unbalanced. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Majel
I-
Barrett said
checking
it
for it.
reminded her of a pregnant duck. That's what she
Oh.
called it.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really has that look.
I'm like, okay, that
I,
makes sense.
That's
What are you
hilarious.
gonna say?
I
Double
forgot
check. You've
that.
gotten to Deep Space Nine season 4, right?
Yes,
We just finished.
we've
finished.
finished
Then
all
you do
of
have- you have-
season 4.
Then you have seen the ship. My actual favorite ship is the Defiant. That was.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I
know
love
that.
how different
Tough
it is,
ship.
and
Tough
how
little
like
thing.
how it's so useful in a different way.
Like
Yeah, it's
utilitarian
compact
kind of.
version.
Yeah.
Worf's house is what we call that ship.
Yeah. Taylor pointed out like, oh yeah, like it becomes Worf's
Oh.
house, but he is like so
Legit.
protective of the ship. Like after like when Garrick is on the last episode we just saw, the season 4 finale, when they have to take Odo to the changeling homeworld, and when Garrick comes on board the Defiant and Worf is freaking out. I had never thought about it before, but until Taylor had pointed that out. But it's like, oh yeah, it's because like he feels like the
Yeah.
Defiant is his home, and like, why is this Cardassian spy in my home? Like, this is my territory.
Yeah.
Does that make it the House of Defiant as opposed to the House of Moog?
Yeah.
Taylor, you've seen all the Star Trek motion pictures up to Star Trek Generations, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we did
So-
Star Treks 2, 3, and 4 all in one night. We did like a
One
Saturday
night.
night of like
Oh.
that big trilogy.
They are kind of they are like that.
They
yeah.
are kind of a
Well,
trilogy.
tonally that does not work. But like story wise, it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was like a
I-
lot of
They
there was a lot of
just get
tragedy and then
they
a
ju-
comedy.
It's like
Yeah.
a tragedy that gets a little funnier and then full romp. Like
It's kind of like the original series in that way, how you could get those episodes that were
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
over the place.
I mean, especially any episodic TV show, occasionally the next episode you're like, either you get something where you're like, oh my god, can terrible things stop happening to these people, or you're just like, the tone shift is so insane.
It's
Totally.
like yeah, I was gonna say it's something that we haven't seen yet. Never mind.
Well, we're
What did
starting
you
to get a
think
lot
of-
of that in DS9. There can be some big tonal shifts. With,
Yeah.
you might have like a funny Ferengi episode, and then it'll be like a really tragic war
that's
story
true.
the next
I'm
Yeah.
episode.
thinking of one for Deep Space Nine specifically, but I don't remember what season it is.
Well, as
What,
we know, DS9 was very influenced by the original series, the
That's true.
producers for it. So it makes
Yeah.
sense that they would have quite that sort of variety.
Yeah, they had all the TOS fanboys that ended up in Ira's writers' room.
Yeah. And one of the
okay.
episodes you have seen is actually taking place this weekend.
True.
Oh yeah, that's
Unfortunately.
right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are
Past tense.
recording this on Friday, August 30th.
Yeah.
The date
That's kinda
that
cool.
Of the Bell
Cisco
riots.
arrives
Yeah.
in the 2020s.
We did a live stream today too, so we marked the day in a weird way.
Nice.
It's kinda
Mainstream
crazy.
media won't cover the Bell
Yeah.
riots, but we know that happened.
True, it's actually
Aaron
true.
knows why this didn't
They're
happen.
happening right now.
I tried to watch that episode earlier today,
yeah.
and my Paramount Plus app broke and started playing the episode in German. It would only let me choose between German, Italian, and French.
Nice.
And I was
Everyone
like,
in Germany was watching it.
yeah, I was like, okay,
funny.
later, I guess.
Oh, that's weird.
Taylor,
But-
do you know this thing about Spurk, and how do you feel about
Oh.
Spurk?
All right. How deep are we getting into this?
Let's go.
As deep as you want.
I think it is very easy to ship them. Like there's a lot of tension between them, and it could be read as romantic or bromantic, depending on your own, I think, view. So I think they leave it open to interpretation. But not really. Like they're gonna tell you no, I'm sure. But in my opinion, that's very open to interpretation.
But it's there since the beginning, right? Like TO,
Yeah.
because you've seen all of it, right? So
Yeah.
it's like almost this is an interesting thing that continues throughout the whole thing, all the way.
There were a few moments where I would be like, oh, and like look at Steven.
I
That was so sweet.
I have a Funko Pop scene that's Spock's death
have
in
that one too.
Wrath of Khan. But my favorite thing is
Funny.
someone on TikTok found it in like a store and went, is he proposing? Like, what is this?
Totally.
Right,
I was
devoid
like-
of context.
And I was like, they're like, is this supposed to be romantic? I was like, no, but yes.
But
Like,
yes.
in one of those 70s things that you're talking about, like that maybe didn't age well, or like, I think now if they had Mudd's passion, that the thing between Kirk and Spock would have been very different.
Yeah.
Not just you're my best friend. That was like so like they had to say it like it was just like so these standards of practice people would let it go through, I guess.
Taylor, remind me how you felt about Spock in Chapel.
I don't think I liked that much. I thought that was kind of cringy. But it was also like that one time because Chapel like love potion Spock.
Right, that's the episode we're talking about. Mudd's passion.
Okay, sorry, I'm not great with the titles.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, so definitely some cringe in there. And I thought it was kind of weird that Chapel would continue to pursue if she knew Spock wasn't interested. I don't know. I think that's probably
sadly the philosophy of the time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And a few decades later too.
Yeah, no, I guess
I don't think that's been resolved.
I guess it's better that both genders were doing that than just like one gender to the other. But I was like, I don't know if it's worse or better that was happening.
Both genders can drug their date. It doesn't.
Oh God.
Oh God.
And then she falls into his lap.
TOS and TNG because we're kind of like going in that same kind of reverse now. It's like a weird time. Like, so by the time TNG kind of corrected some of the things that TOS got wrong, maybe, if you will, or tried to correct it, but then TNG had its own like bad things.
I don't know,
like,
Taylor, did you which one did you feel like aged better, TOS or TNG?
I think TNG. I think there was maybe more in TNG that aged better.
Which one did you like watching more?
To be fair, the original series was better than the Next Generation. But I do think that, the Next Generation has more seasons and more episodes, so it's more likely they're going to get more right. Whereas like the original series only has 3 seasons to go off of and less episodes. So I think like in terms of like proportion, TNG just gets more right because they had more volume. But overall, like watching it in general, like I wasn't a huge fan of the Next Generation. Are we moving from the animated series into Next Generation now?
Yeah, we can talk about TNG.
I was gonna ask you, Taylor, like since I know that there's some rough spots early on in TNG, had you come in on that, like if that was your first Trek, do you think you might have not become a Trek fan?
Maybe not with season 1. I don't know. It really took me a long time to warm up, and I was nervous to leave the original series and the animated series to get new characters. But that's just a personal issue. I have a hard time like letting go and then restarting with new characters. And so I was nervous going into it for season 1, but then I did immediately love Data. I thought he was very relatable, and he was just Spock enough, but not enough. Like he was kind of like Spock, but opposite in a way.
Like Spock, but not too much.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting. Like even like the first like couple of sentences, I turned to Steven and was like, "Is he an android?" Like something he had said like immediately like popped off in my head. I was like, "He's got to be." Because that popped up a lot in the original series. Like Kirk was like
a lot of androids.
Yeah, a lot of android stuff. So I figured like, oh, that'd be interesting if they make a full-time character that way.
Gene
androids
loved
were really
to
bad,
reuse
too.
ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed Data. And I liked Crusher a lot immediately. I hated Wesley immediately.
You came around on him though.
I did, but I'm just saying.
He had fun wardrobe. We did a ranking of all the sweaters.
Here's my Wesley Crusher cup with his little
which sweater won the ranking? I don't know if I remember.
I think I had a very different reaction of watching TNG with Wesley, and that I had a crush on him because I was a 12-year-old.
Oh, totally.
And I was like, cute teenage boy.
I was obnoxious and smart, and so I related to him. So I liked him.
I think he was my age when the show aired.
I think he was a little older than me, or around my age. I think.
Yeah. We're about the same age.
Dave actually wanted me to try to show Taylor like some like good TNG episodes, and we were in season 1, but she didn't want to skip ahead.
No, we have to go chronological.
I suggested it, and I got like yelled at. I was like, "No, we don't skip episodes.
Yeah.
Like we go in order."
I think I also gave that suggestion because I love TNG, and I have a list I give to friends of like, here's episodes you should skip. To like, Code of
if you're new.
Yeah, Code of Honor's first on there, and then there's episodes that'll just say stuff like, it's fine, but it's so boring. Like, don't.
I think a lot of people like they don't remember or like how many episodes of a show they don't like because they don't go back and like rewatch those. So they just have like this. They only remember like the good stuff. But like when you go back and look at it, it's like, oh, like that good stuff was only like half of the show. There's like all this other stuff too that was just kind of mid or flat out terrible.
And
I was going to ask, what is your most forgettable episode? And I realized that's a question that can't be answered. Because you can't. Exactly.
What was the most frustrating episode you think we've watched?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or just some of them. What were some of like the really frustrating? I know there was a couple of TNG ones. I was surprised how much like you don't like Commander Riker.
Oh my god. He's on my hit. Like he's like I had beef with him. I don't like his attitude. I don't know. He just seems really arrogant and like I think they were trying to go for like this Kirk vibe and like have this really confident like lead but not a lead, and it just did not land for me. I really liked Patrick Stewart as Picard. I think he did great. I loved so much of that. But the question was
just quick ask. I just out of curiosity because Picard is sometimes portrayed as a bit icy and not real. He doesn't like the kids and stuff like that. But that didn't bother you?
I find that very relatable.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So there was a few episodes like with the kids, and I was like, "Oh, yeah."
Kids, yuck.
That was
TNG. Yeah, had a lot of kids. Yeah, and
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you warm up to Riker at all though? Later, like in the later
No, it got
seasons?
progressively worse.
Oh, no.
I liked him like a little in season 1. I was like, okay, and then season 2, he got the beard, and I was like, okay, this could be better. And then just like I don't know, it like peaked maybe around like 3, and then I was like, you know what, I give up liking him, and it got worse. And then I was taking it personal, and like every single time he would do something stupid, I'd be like, see, this is why I don't like him. And
then you got 2 of them with the
Can you give us an
episode.
example? Can you give us an example of like something you didn't like that he did?
Everything. I don't know.
Do you like Thomas Riker more than William Riker? Like he showed up on Deep Space Nine.
No, they were both terrible. But I don't know. Maybe I just have something against Jonathan Frakes' acting at this. I don't think it's actually. I don't know. Maybe I'm just super biased for some reason.
You like
he's
directing.
probably a better director.
He's a great
better director than actor.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with him. Yeah. I'm joking, but
I'm laughing because Riker is generally a popular character.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I can see how like he like there is dumb stuff he does. Yeah. But I was like,
but that's why there's so many
he's very condescending.
There's so many memes. Riker's kind of.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's like,
and Jonathan Frakes.
He's on a fine line, like being douchey or not. Like it always like there's always like.
And I think part of the reason I think Riker to people has aged better than like some of those tendencies Kirk is that Jonathan Frakes is more personable himself than like William Shatner.
In real life, Jonathan Frakes is awesome. But I like Riker a lot. I do acknowledge though that there are a lot of cringe moments with Riker. Well, with all of them. I mean, Jordy has cringe moments.
Yeah. Oh my god! Don't even get me started. The whole Leah Brahms thing. I was like.
I mean, I will say LeVar Burton has specifically talked about how he was like, I don't know what they were doing anytime they did romance with Geordi. Like,
yeah, no, they wrecked that. It was really poorly.
Somebody hated him.
I think my beef with Riker is that he's very condescending, and I feel like he always comes across as arrogant and condescending. Even when he's supposed to be coming across as like sincere and sweet, to me, it always seems like he's just being manipulative. And so I don't have like specific I'd have to like watch through and come through with specific examples. But that was the vibe I always got, is that he's like not trustworthy. And then
Jonathan Frakes acting back then was also more soap opera because he had come from
Yeah.
that world. So I think there's a little bit of that kind of probably ekes in.
yeah.
Taylor, how did you feel about Dr. Pulaski?
Oh
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
I hated her at first because mostly because I really liked Bev. And then I was like,
Yay.
what? Like, where did she go? And then she was constant, like the first few episodes, Pulaski was like brutalizing my boy Data. And I was like, why is she calling him it? And like, you know, kind of just being, not very nice to him. But she learned. So I appreciated that she like took time, or, they wrote the story to where she
grows. She's like
grows.
Yeah.
Exactly. And by the end, I really loved her. I thought the episode, like, she super cared for her patients. I thought that came across very strongly, especially the episode where she went to the diseased planet and got sick herself and was getting really super old. I think that was the plot of that one.
The reason why Diana Muldaur will no longer work in science fiction because she had to get the prosthetics glued to her face and also like look like she was ancient, which I think actors don't like to be made to look ugly. So that's not why they went to Hollywood. So
did you recognize her from the original series?
I didn't at first. So Steven was very sneaky and he didn't tell me until the very end because he's all like, I want you to have a complete opinion about her before I share that she was in the original series.
Yeah.
And it turns out that she wore my favorite costume from the original series and the
Her costume is great in the original series.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. And I loved that it was like a double, it was functional but also aesthetic. And I thought that was such a cool episode.
The Medusan episode, Is There in Truth No Beauty?
Oh yeah, that one. Sorry, I always confuse that one and the Tholian Web, the titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked Pulaski a lot. She grew on me, and I thought it was cool to have her almost like more as an equal with Picard. I felt like when Crusher was around, even when she comes back, like they're equals, but there's also like that will they, won't they romance, and so it doesn't super feel like equals in some ways. Like they pull rank on each other, like both of them do. Whereas like I think Pulaski like takes no shit like from anyone, and she's like, she's just more stern, and she has that confidence, and I don't know, she comes across.
Her and Worf got along really well, which I thought was interesting. I really liked that.
Oh yeah,
they have that
I tried-
direct
Interesting to
communication.
I would say I tried to, as I'm older, I tried to give. Oh man, the first time I watched TNG, I did not love Pulaski. I also was watching it very randomly. Would catch a random episode, so I probably saw one episode she was being horrible. Didn't see another episode with her like till a month or two later.
Yeah.
But I like, yeah, she does really grow. But it was like one of those things that I was like, I bet I would have liked if she had been able to stick around. Liked her, but I don't like. I got the impression that like Deanna Mulgrew didn't really want to be there and that, anymore.
Yeah,
but
I don't think she ever gelled with the cast. It didn't feel like a family to her.
Yeah,
I know. I've seen an interview. It was in some documentary where she basically said that like TNG wasn't real acting compared to the original series with talking to Shatner. So I don't think she was enjoying 80s sci-fi world.
So Taylor, I wanna ask you about DS9 and Voyager. But before we go into that, just let me get some of your thoughts on Star Trek Generations, on seeing like the movies transitioning from like the original series and like the monster maroons and all of that to like now we get like a Picard in the TNG crew movie.
Okay.
Like how does that compare? Did Generations, did it live up to like the because you really love like the Wrath of Khan specifically, but I think the other movies you've largely enjoyed them.
Yeah, I definitely think the highlight movies are The Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock for me. And all the other ones I think aren't as memorable. I don't super remember, like we haven't watched the sixth movie multiple times yet. And even the fifth one, like I kind of, I have to like
the fifth one's weird.
Myself. It's just like, they're not as like sticking out in my brain. The Generations one I think also kind of doesn't stick out. Like what sticks out is the moments I was laughing so hard at. Like when they were crashing the Enterprise onto the planet and it panned over like the Enterprise like crashing through the trees.
It was like a movie. They had to do like the big epic shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was really surprised that Shatner was in it. I didn't expect that at all.
Oh wow, you didn't know
and then
it it was a movie to bridge the gap?
I mean, I kind of figured it was gonna like bridge the gap, but I didn't expect any cameos from the original series. And I did get a lot of laughs out of like Picard and Kirk having their horse girl moments, and it was just so random. Like I was like, like this is so much horse action for this movie.
Blame Shatner for that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just thought it was. I don't know. I was really disappointed that Kirk died that way. I thought it was kind of a weird send off for such a huge character, especially like when they had these 6 other movies in the original series movies that they could have. I mean, I'm glad they didn't, because then you get, you know, to bridge the gap, like you say. But I think there could have been a more, I don't know, not theatrical, but maybe like conclusive way for him to die that made more sense with his own storyline. It kind of felt like, oh, Kirk is dying so that Picard has like man pain to like move on and like and have their own stories and like have future Trek. So it didn't feel like a very good, you know, here's a bow wrapped on Kirk's death or anything.
Right. Yeah. He didn't really like. They didn't kill the character for any good reason. Just like, we're not going to use Kirk anymore, so let's kill him.
Yeah.
It also in the universe, I always thought that would be a very weird thing to explain for Kirk. It's like, I found Kirk and he died. Like, he was already dead.
Yeah.
No, I found him. He was alive.
Right.
He is now dead, though. I buried
him. If I was Picard, I would just not say anything. I'd be like, well...
Right.
We were all blaming poor Captain Harriman for getting him killed, but I guess it was actually your fault, John Luke.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's his fault. Like there was a bad guy involved.
I think we could. I forgot that character's name.
Soren, I think.
Soren. My brain, So my brain just went Malcolm McDowell, and then no other information would enter.
But we're currently on Voyager and Deep Space Nine. She's just finished season 4 of DS9 and season 2 of Voyager. So we actually like started season 3 of Voyager. She's seen the season 3 premiere, Basics Part 2, when Suter and the Doctor and Tom Paris get the Voyager back and rescue everyone from the planet where the dinosaurs are eating people. So Taylor, just with your partial impressions of seeing 4 of the 7 DS9 seasons and 2 of the 7 Voyager seasons, what do you think about those shows and how do they compare to the original series and Next Gen?
Okay, let's start with Deep Space Nine because we started that first. I've been super obsessed with Deep Space Nine since we started. Like even like episode 1, I was like, oh, this is really different and really interesting. And like I super love Avery Brooks. I don't know anything about him as a person, so I'm sorry if that's. But he's such a.
Have you ever heard
actor.
of him? Like he's not been in a ton of things.
No.
So you have never seen this guy in anything but Deep
80s
Space.
TV shows, probably.
You didn't know he existed 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, I loved. Okay, well, there's some things I didn't like about that, but like him losing his wife, I thought that was super sad and sucked, and then brought in the Borg. But you know, I also hate the Borg. Sorry,
you don't like the Borg.
But I thought it was
people
really
like the Borg.
No,
They
it's
like
a terrible
the drama
villain.
that the Borg bring, but yeah, we should put a pin in that and come back to that in a minute after you finish what you're
But I love that Sisko has such a close relationship with his son. Like Jake and Benjamin's relationship is amazing. And it's so positive so quickly. And it's very rare, I think, to see single fathers who are also like nurturing and supportive and sweet and tell their sons, like, I love you. Like it's such a positive, like masculine interaction. And like it consistently it's consistent throughout the show.
Yeah.
Like he's never, you know, well, I mean, they have their spats, but they grow through them. And he's still supportive, and he's still kissing his son on the forehead and telling him, I love him. And it's just such a great thing for men to see. And I think that isn't, you know, even today, widely used in media. Yeah. So I was really impressed with that, like right off the bat. And then I was also really interested about like sitting and exploring like the Bajoran and Cardassian stuff. I thought that was really interesting when it first kind of was coming about in TNG with Ensign Ro. And then it was like, oh, we're going to sit here and like learn more about this and like kind of deep dive something for the first time, like in Star Trek. Because before, like the most we would deep dive on something was like 2 episodes at most. Or they would string the Borg along, but it would only be like in total maybe 4 or 5 episodes. You know, like it wasn't like all season long we're fighting the Borg.
Yeah, that's sort of one of my sort of a related question is Deep Space Nine is of course was the first Trek to kind of really be in a localized place and not be very explory. So it sounds to me like you are enjoying the other depth that it found since it's not doing space exploration.
Right.
Is that the case?
Well, I think it's cool because you do get some exploration in Deep Space Nine, but they come to the station. So you still get like cultural differences, and you get aliens, and you get like random, you know, tangent times to either Bajor or into the is it the Gamma Quadrant? That one's the Gamma Quadrant,
That's
right?
The Gamma
Okay.
Quadrant, Voyager's Delta.
Because they have both, and I always get a little bit.
We're watching both.
I was like going back and forth. It gets so confusing. Which quadrant? Like
it was confusing in the 90s. I would have to like stop and think every time.
Well, even like, why didn't you just use the wormhole to get home, Voyager? And it's like, no, it's a different quadrant altogether.
So
quadrant. There's really 4 of them.
And with Deep Space Nine, I also like super love Odo and Quark. Like super love them, and I love all of the interactions that they have. Like their frenemies kind of situation is amazing. The dialogue that's written for them is so good, and I don't know, like we just watched the episode where Quark lost his bar to
Brunt,
Jeffrey
Combs, she's gotten some Jeffrey Combs characters.
And like, in the end,
everyone trying to count, like how many of them are you up to now?
She's seen the 3 that he's in DS9. We've had the episode that Wayun is in and dies, the couple of Brunt episodes, and then the guy who wanted the Kira porn hologram.
I feel bad that when you were like, "What's your first one?" That's like the one he has to like talk about.
Yeah. I was like, this guy is going to play a lot of characters in Star Trek, and most of them are cooler than this guy.
I think all of them are cooler than that guy.
Are we talking about? Y'all talking about Brunt or oh no, a
one-off
character?
Yeah,
he is a
Jeffrey
one-off
Combs
character.
played who wanted the deep fake porn of Kira, so instead Kira and Odo put Quark's face on her body, and there is that image that is. I'm sure some people like love that image, but it's haunted me. It's haunted me for 3 decades, but.
I do think Taylor. It sounds like you're like the writing is like a step above maybe some of the other Treks as far as character interaction goes. So glad you're enjoying that.
Yes, I super love the characters in DS9. Like it's really easy to love all of them, I think, and even just from season 1. Yes, I understand that there's some controversy because he definitely hits on his patients way more than should be legal.
I must say, as someone who loves Bashir, please stop hitting on your patients.
Yeah, but I do think like he's very sweet and endearing. And if you're thinking about his character in context of like this is his first job out of school, like he's so excited and like seems genuinely passionate, and he still has that bright fire in him whenever you first start in season 1. Like he's like, holy crap, like there's so much I can do. And I think we see Bashir grow as a doctor in Deep Space Nine, but also we kind of see, I don't want to say like see his fire burn out, but like you kind of can see like his career is growing. Yeah, he's maturing, and he doesn't have that same passion like even in
that youthful, that kind of naive, youthful. Like I can't wait to get out here and practice medicine on the frontier. And then he becomes like after he does it, he becomes more jaded. And,
I feel like it's more his fire's under control now. It's not like
that's totally fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, but I think that the character development in Deep Space Nine is very good. Whereas like in TNG, it was like Data and I don't know Picard. They all felt still very the same at the end of TNG.
That is a very fair assessment of
Pulaski had an arc that you pointed out within one season.
That's true.
Yeah. One season.
It's weird that she's the character that grew the most. And what do you think of Keiko and O'Brien? Like
hold
their
on.
relationship.
There's Keiko and O'Brien, and there was another question. Dave?
I was just saying, just that TNG was still episodic like the original series.
Oh, yeah.
And Deep Space Nine was where they started really trying out some new stuff. And so they get to develop Keiko and O'Brien. Are you how do you feel about it? Interested? Not interested?
Well, in the TNG episode where O'Brien is like, I'm getting married, I was like, what?
Out
Like,
of
we don't know
nowhere.
anything about this person. This is such a random thing to like bring in. And then she's like on the fence the whole episode. And I'm like, then don't get married. Like, that just seems like the duh thing to me. And I'm like, oh, they're going to get married. I was really disappointed by the ending. And at the time, I wasn't anywhere close to like excited about Miles O'Brien because he was a background character in TNG.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we get into Deep Space Nine and it's like, oh, he transferred, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of boring. Like he's kind of like a background character, and then he really, you know, brightens and shines in Deep Space Nine. And I like their relationship. I think she's very sweet. I think he could do better as a partner for her. I don't think he's as supportive as he says he is. But I really think that Keiko is sweet. She's, you know, very endearing, and I think is very, I don't know, thoughtful as a character.
The internet just now came around on Keiko O'Brien. My entire life,
took a
Taylor,
long time.
It took
the
way too
internet
long.
hated her, and then
Why?
like a year ago, I think
Sexism,
yes.
sexism is your answer.
Oh, that's
I
it?
don't like. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't.
because people are conditioned to not like the bitchy wife character
Yeah.
on like every
Well,
the
sitcom.
naggy wife.
When is she
Yeah.
bitchy?
She's
And
not.
unfortunately-
That's the thing.
Well, but
Okay.
the way they are written is even in the 90s at the time, they felt a little outdated. It was more like a 50s
little-
sitcom.
I was
Like they
thinking-
were.
I feel like they're more written like that on TNG than they are in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it's still there was some lingering. I don't
and
know.
I
It just at the
always-
time we're like, it just
I
didn't
always
feel very
found-
fresh or.
Keiko, oh, okay. In a very specific way, Keiko sometimes reminds me of my mom in that I'm a military brat and my mom was a teacher on a military base. So, like, a very specific.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah,
Does
where
your
I'm
mom like botany also?
You know, she is really good with plants. Like,
And she lived in Japan for a little bit, so she's got like the little
She-
Japanese connection.
if I say a
you
little
go.
bit, my mom lived in Japan. I feel like the majority of her adult life.
Your mom has probably spent more time in Japan than Rosalind Chow, the actress, has.
There's a chance. I lived in Japan for a long time, and then my parents, even after I graduated high school, stayed there till like 3 years ago.
Wow.
But it's sometimes and the TNG had this before where people were just like, stuff they'd be like, this is weird, and I went, this is normal in military life, actually. Like, bringing your kids to this place, people would be like, you brought your kids to a military base?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
else are they going to take them?
Well, yeah, where else are they gonna go? Like,
Yeah, there was. Well, I can't remember which episode. There was something where the people were giving, like, I think it was Cisco a hard time about, like, well, you have children here. It's just like, yeah, but do you want to just leave my kid somewhere else? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's like, what did
Yeah.
you want?
Sohail is saying that Keiko and Miles felt like his parents, and he had to step away for allergies.
Yeah.
But
I'd wonder. I was because I'm trying to remember how much of him there has been where you are, but I was wondering what your thoughts of Garrick are.
Oh, I love Garrick.
That's-
Plain, simple Garrick.
Yeah, it's just he's really
Justin
easy
Taylor,
to
what
like.
else? Yeah.
I really like Gul Dukat as well.
Mhm.
Like, I think he's easy to love, hate.
yes.
Like, he's terrible, but also he's so well written and so complex. And I feel like Garrick is written very complex as well.
Yes.
And I love his insidious little mind working, double lying. Like, you never know what's real and what's not, and they never confirm, which I think is really
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
It's always so up in the air with him.
I mean, the famous, like, they're all true. What about the lies? Especially the lies. You're
Yeah.
like,
Yes, yes.
And you're like, so this is the explanation for this character. Like,
yeah. See, now
Wait,
you'll
Kai-
understand a bunch of memes that
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
would have made sense to you before. So
Yeah.
And then
he's
Kai
also
Wynn
a-
is also that, like, she could just smile
yeah.
as she's like strangling you or something. It's like,
I
oh,
know.
child, or my child. It's like the bless you of the South. Or whatever.
Yeah.
we
Bless your heart.
we
Oh, bless your
actually
heart.
started right around the time we started watching the original series. We just it was because Dave was doing a movie challenge that I was like, I got to watch a movie with like a best actress nomination
Oh.
in it or something. So we watched Cuckoo's
the
Nest
Cuckoo's
for
Nest.
One Flew Over
Oh,
the
wow.
Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
Neither one of us had ever seen that classic film,
Oh,
but we
wow.
got to see her performance in that right before going into DS9. So
Mhm.
Louise Fletcher, who sadly
Yeah, she's
passed
amazing.
away
I-
recently, but
there was
great at playing villainesses.
Yeah.
talk about
And
characters.
she was
that
so
you
nice
love
in
to
real
hate.
life.
Yes.
there was a person that I showed Deep Space Nine to, and they're like, "Is it weird that I'm getting Nurse Ratchet vibes from this character?" And I went, "That's literally Nurse Ratchet." And they're like, "Oh, okay."
Nice.
And Taylor, speaking of Garrick and Ducat, we also have a sinister Cardassian character on Voyager with Seska, who we
Ooh, yes.
You just died.
yeah, we just finished season 2, so we concluded her story. But what did you think of Seska and Voyager, or just any of Voyager in general?
I was scared to start Voyager too, because I was really okay. So what I'm struggling with is like, I really like Deep Space Nine, and since we're tottering back and forth, I'm like always looking forward to Deep Space Nine, which is unfair a little bit to like Voyager and even to TNG before, because every time it was time for TNG, I was like, oh, I just want to stay on the station. But I really do like Voyager. I am obsessed with Captain Janeway. I feel like very represented in a lot of ways by her. Which I obviously, like, being a woman, and I used to work in tech, and so it's really cool to like see like a woman of science like at the helm.
You were born the year Voyager premiered, like 1995 birth both Captain Janeway and you. Like y'all are like together.
So basically the same.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, but I do really enjoy how strong she is, and they're not afraid to like really make her assertive. And there's not like there has been on a couple episodes where people were like kind of sexist towards her, but overall, it's not as common as I expected. I was gonna think like, oh, here we go, like every episode we're gonna have to deal with sexism, and surprisingly, it's been very straightforward and just go with the story as if it's any normal day, and I am obsessed with that. It's like that's the way that you have stories with diversity, is you just put them in there. Like Cisco is a great example. You just put them in these situations and you run, and it has nothing to do with whatever their uniqueness is. And so I really like Janeway. I was really nervous about Tom. I was getting Riker vibes from Tom, but he's warmed up on me a little bit. Who else do we have? Kim, Love, B'Elanna. I like her. I don't know. She came out really fiery in the first few episodes, and I was really worried. But she is really cool, and I love Klingon stuff. So it was really cool to have like a half Klingon on.
Tuvok got on your nerves a little bit early on. I think he won you over eventually, but he kind of
he's
sternness.
He's so pessimistic.
Oh, yeah, his pessimism.
He is so pessimistic. I'm like, okay, this isn't a Vulcan trait. This is a Tuvok trait. And like, I was like at first like thinking of it that way. I'm like, oh, they're making him like this, like because it's logical and whatever. But it's actually not. Like he's actually just more pessimistic than Spock or whatever as a Vulcan. I
actually like that Vulcans can be individualized enough like that you know, even though writers know all the basic Vulcan traits. You can have a more pessimistic one, a more upbeat one, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
They're all smug.
Yeah.
Yes. They always know best.
Tuvix. We just saw the episode Tuvix. Oh. This is I told you it is a huge debate.
I'm so scared.
A very, very divisive thing. But do you want to let people know? Like,
put your opinion out there.
Where do you fall? Are you on team Janeway did the right thing, or are you on team Janeway is a murderer?
No, okay, firmly.
No in between.
Janeway did the right thing. So, in my opinion, well, first of all, like, duh, she's gonna do this because we have Tuvok and Neelix as full-time characters. So, like, obviously. We have to have Tuvok,
right? Anyone who knows anything about television production at all,
they
shouldn't be surprised by that.
They didn't just randomly fire these two actors.
I was actually thinking about that the entire episode. I was like, what a way, though. Like, maybe they did both want out, and they're like, hey, we'll just merge them together. I was like, that's like a really great idea. Like, if you did have two people who wanted to leave a show, but. Yeah, I was like, okay, Tuvix, at first I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those episodes I hate. Like at first, because I was like, this is so random and weird and just like, I don't know. I wasn't super loving the merger thing. But I was surprised that like he stayed merged for so long, and like there was time spent in the episode. Like it was over like 2 or 3 months or something that episode occurs, and so you really get to see like Tuvix like integrate into the crew, and that's where you build that controversy, because he's now characterized and implanted in a different way than Tuvok or Neelix. And so I don't know, like I can see the other side of that argument, but like in the end, you've lost Tuvok and Neelix, and neither of them wanted to be merged. So like that's like there's no consent there, and so of course, in my opinion, the rational thing would be you separate them.
No, if Dave and Sohail got merged together against their will, I would make them stay together. Like, no, y'all are forced to be locked together eternally.
Like, because I totally agree with you, and I wish I could rewatch that episode without all the knowledge I know of people being weird about that episode. But I'm just like, you run into the issue right away where like these two people have partners.
Yeah.
Like, and I also
ask Cass and T'Pel how they feel.
Yeah.
I also didn't love like Tuvix as a character. I didn't think he was acted badly. But I didn't think that like the character was, as I joke and I didn't need Neelix with a Vulcan superiority complex.
Yeah. Totally.
Rachel was immune to the Tuvix charm.
Yeah.
It seemed to work on everyone else. I thought he was cool.
If the show was made today, that we would probably have him over the course of like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Probably would have like stayed.
I also, I mean, they've all heard this story. It was once like weirdly accosted at a bar in Janeway cosplay. I think about this episode. So, that's the whole.
And they like accosted you because they're like, why would you want to cosplay as Janeway, the murderer? Or
yes,
whatever,
they basically.
Right?
I believe the exact words were, I was at. It was around Halloween, which is why I was in a costume, and it was meeting.
You were just
coworkers.
randomly.
Yeah, and some random dude I do not know made a beeline for me and said, "Are you dressed as Janeway, the only criminal captain?"
Oh.
And then I tried to talk. My poor coworker knows nothing about Star Trek, and it's like, just like, what's happening? And I tried to defend her, and then I said, "Oh, I don't know that I would call her a criminal." And then he was like, "How much Star Trek have you watched then?" And I'm like,
"Yeah, that was
wow."
Yeah. And then I defended. I won't say what I used as a defense because you haven't got there, but I defended something that I said all the captains have done something in gray areas, and I mentioned something Sisko had done. And then he started talking about how much he hated Sisko, and then I realized that the two characters he hated were the first black lead and the first woman lead, and I was like, oh, I've got to go, because I think there's a different issue going on here.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Like, and then we lied and said we saw another coworker to get away from him. But yeah, that was just randomly at a bar. Like.
So yeah, welcome to Trek Fandom, Taylor.
Yeah.
Watch out for those.
I promise that's not the norm.
No.
Like.
Yeah, I always say we're not a perfect.
Just gotta be a little cautious.
We're not a perfect fandom, but I still stand by that we are the best. And speaking of,
we're great. Like, he is an anomaly who should not be counted.
We're speaking of cosplay. Taylor and I are going to be dressing up at some conventions soon. So we're going to be at the Nashville Star Trek convention that Creation is doing in a couple of weeks. So we might be dressed up. I don't know. Just I'll bust out some Starfleet uniforms probably, but
no, y'all gotta do a couple's costume.
Yeah.
I mean, like if we're just cosplaying uniforms from like the same ship, like that technically would make it like couple cosplay, right? So.
If you hadn't just talked about how much you hated Riker, I would suggest Riker and Troy.
Riker and Troy.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know if is it cultural appropriation if it was not actually like from the culture, if it was like a con artist made it up, but like if I did like the Chakotay facial tattoo and we both had like the Star Trek Voyager command uniform, we could be like Janeway and Chakotay.
I mean,
I would avoid doing the tattoo just because.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a little bit of a get out of jail free card with Chakotay, but that's
I'm still not going to do it, but
yeah.
Why would you want to anyway? That's
No, finally, you gotta lose the beard and go as Harry Kim.
Okay, well, I'll
There'll be
pull it
no
up. Yeah,
problem.
I have
Go.
that yellow shirt because I like
I guess
cosplaying
it's
O'Brien.
now occurred to
so-
me that I technically at Vegas last year. I technically cosplayed an Asian character, but I didn't do anything to make myself look more Asian
Yeah,
because
I've
didn't occur to me to do that.
right. There's lots of
Yeah.
cosplay that's like that, and I think that's actually very thoughtfully done.
Yeah.
Cosplayers have gotten so good about that now. Honestly, most of them I think are really great.
I
Definitely.
was just about to recommend a costume that you haven't seen yet, so like it's like, oh, never mind. Shoot.
Is there anything else that y'all want to ask Taylor about the first half of Star Trek that she has watched?
Yeah.
Were there any like preconceived ideas like from the outside that you like had always heard? Like, oh, this person, is or this episode's amazing, and then you saw it and you're like, eh.
Not super not super episodic. I don't know if that's a word, but actor wise, like I already knew like Shatner was kind of, Shatner. And I also kind of had like this weird like infatuation with Nimoy for no reason when I was in high school. Like I thought he was super cool.
Because you knew him from the Kelvin movies because he was in those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was kind of like, oh, I want to see like, original Spock. I never got around to it. I was so overwhelmed. Like when the Kelvin movies came out, I was like, oh, this is manageable. Like I can watch this. And it's also accessible like at the time.
Yeah.
Whereas like watching the original series wasn't really like, I mean, it probably was, but like in my younger brain, like it was like, I'd have to hunt down like and figure out the whole timeline and what would I watch first. Like I've always wanted to watch Star Trek. And it's always been like one of these like huge things that I just haven't had time to figure out.
It's kind of daunting.
It's definitely daunting. I totally get that.
Yeah. And so, but the Kelvin movies definitely like sparked that interest. Like I had known about Star Trek before. Like my dad watched it a lot as a kid, or not. He wasn't a kid. He was like, I guess in his 20s. I don't know. And a kid, I guess, the early original series, but he watched some of TNG too. But he didn't really share that with me. That wasn't really, he was more into the other Star fandoms, right? I almost said it.
I'm sure I've said it on somewhere on here before.
So I guess the whole point of that was that Kelvin movies really inspired me to want to go and watch all of it, and I just haven't really found the right time. So I do feel really excited about doing this project because it feels like the right time and I have the right person to like show it all to me.
That's cool.
And it feels really like, I don't know, it's cool to be able to like bounce between the shows and like have context as we go. And I do like the way that Steven is really keeping me like no spoilers and not giving me any context or whatever to anything like the drama or whatever of whatever the movies are happening until after. So I can really like form a non-biased opinion and just watch it as
That's very cool.
So I do feel really fortunate that I haven't been spoiled for almost anything. The only spoilers I would technically have are the Kelvin timeline spoilers, like, stuff that happens, in the movies and in the original series that they kind of stole from that or borrowed, whatever.
Taylor, if someone was not doing as deep a dive as you are on this and was just like, oh, I think I might want to get into Star Trek, would you suggest the Kelvin movies as a starting place, or do you think there's a different one that you would suggest?
What would you recommend to someone?
Like overall?
Yeah, just if somebody was kind of curious about Star Trek, but not gonna do like the full committal to the to watch it all.
Sure. I did. Okay. Well, I feel like I am a little biased here because I did see all of the Kelvin movies in theaters on release week, and loved them. I loved the first one and the third one. The third one was my favorite. But so I think that's a good place to start. Like if you were just wanting to like encourage someone to even see, like just taste it and see like, do you like this kind of vibe? I think that's okay. But I strongly believe that if you're going to do Trek, you should start with the original series, but that's a bias as well, because I really think you should always see the original content before you see anything that's a spinoff of it. Because I think it helps provide like the context for the future shows. And it gives like that history that you need, I think, for understanding, I don't want to say the vibes and the aesthetic, but like what is the show going to be like? So I think having the Kelvin movies is a good way to like just taste it and like put your toes in the water, and if you're really digging it, then you can really deep dive all of these things, which is what happened to me. So that's why I'm biased to say that. But if I was gonna recommend someone, I would tell them to start at the original series and then just wait until you get to Deep Space Nine, and then you're gonna be super stoked.
Cool.
Yeah, even though no one felt that way at the time except for me, but it definitely seems to be the one that modern audiences connect with.
My
I remember when
theory,
DS9 first came out, like you were talking about not moving around and the people coming to you. We are always like, the intro started and we're used to the next generation, and all of a sudden you're like, why is there no motion? Where is the ship? Yeah, exactly. It's like, like, okay, move, do something, and then it was over. So it was very funny.
My theory, which I don't think people will disagree, is I think streaming really helped Deep Space Nine because it works much better in a binge as opposed to the how it first came out, where you could accidentally miss an episode if a baseball game aired during that week,
which happens a lot.
Yeah,
but I'm making her watch it the old school way instead of the binge. I'm making her like, no, it's time for a Voyager episode.
Yeah,
like, it's time for a TNG movie. We gotta check in on Picard and the Enterprise.
But you don't have to wait for seasons though.
Yeah, you did. I still remember one time someone, like an older friend, was annoyed at me that I didn't have to like wait with the cliffhanger for Best of Both Worlds. They're like, it was like you didn't watch it live, and I had to go, that's literally impossible.
That's how I felt about, like, this is a tangent, but that's how I felt about Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock. Like, I watched in season 2, and then we waited like 5 years or whatever for season 3. And I was like,
oh
wow, all of y'all saw that, or y'all didn't have to even wait for this like cliffhanger, literally.
I was there with you waiting, and it. God, being
some of those shows like
being into British shows can be so weird because they take so long.
Yeah, but I do appreciate just being able to go straight through this trek. Like we did have like a little bit of a hanger sometimes between seasons. We'll like watch some movies because like one of our rules is like once we finish a season, I get to pick a movie to show Steven that he hasn't seen. And so sometimes between seasons we'll have breaks. So sometimes the seasons have like a cliffhanger or something, and we have to wait a couple days. But even still, it's not a whole summer or years. Yeah.
I do remember I was watching an episode like with friends, and I was like, knowing you as a person, he was like, this should be the last episode. I was like, knowing you as a person, I know how this episode ends. This will not be the last episode. Like, we will watch the next one after it. And he was like, we'll see. Anyway, we have to watch the next one right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's a Deep Space Nine episode you haven't gotten to yet.
I guess
I'm not saying.
I think Dave was curious about like Taylor's thoughts on the Borg. I don't know if we ever circled back to that.
I am fascinated by that.
Just speaking of the season finales and like the big cliffhangers, that is like the big iconic one with Star Trek is Best of Both Worlds. But there's a lot of stuff that a lot of Star Trek you haven't watched yet, so keep that in mind, Taylor. Right. Just so far, what you've seen of the Borg only in TNG and just like a little bit in the first episode of DS9. But yeah, so far you're pretty unimpressed with them as characters, as antagonists. You kind of roll your eyes at them as the bad guys.
Yeah, so like the original introduction, I felt like it was like hopeless and like they're overpowered, and I just felt like, okay, that's already, in my opinion, boring, because it's like, okay, no matter what we do, it's gonna be horrible, and it did lead to a stupid resolution, in my opinion. Like, they literally put the Borg to sleep. I was like, this is the resolution for this like arc that is so scary and terrible. And I mean, like, the worst part of all of it was obviously Picard, getting Borg napped and like brainified and all that, and the PTSD that comes with that, which I thought was really, I think that was handled well. And I was actually impressed that it came up in several episodes after, and that, they didn't just like sweep it under the rug and forget that this guy had this horrible thing happen to him. Yeah. But overall, I just felt like the Borg was kind of boring. And I don't know. And they're just like walking around on the Borg ship station thing, and they're all walking around, and then they don't see them because I don't know. I just was like, this
Arguably,
is
that's
Because they're
so
not a
weird.
threat or something.
See, I
It's one of
think
the things I
maybe
like best about the Borg, but
I think I maybe have the thing of I found the Borg scary because the first time I saw the Borg, I was literally a child, and so I'm like creepy, like especially anytime you see someone like Picard, anyone you knew turn into a Borg, I find that so creepy.
Yeah, yeah,
But they are also, like, as a concept, they're very straightforward and simple. They're not like villains with tradition, with depth, the way like the Romulan commander from Balance of Terror is, or even some of the Klingons will meet over time. So yeah, I kind of get where the Borg can feel kind of one note.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get. I'm curious that what was your favorite like TNG like villain or antagonist then? If like the Borg weren't your favorite.
Is it wrong to say Q?
Oh,
See,
I was gonna
actually,
ask about Q. I was gonna
Q
ask
is why I
you.
added antagonist because I was like, it could just be Q.
Yeah, I really enjoyed most of the Q episodes. So I really enjoyed John Delancey's performances. I thought he was really fun and quirky, but also had some really serious, moments and stuff. Loved his interactions with Picard. I thought that was always really fun. The love-hate frenemies thing again.
It's funny. When I was a kid, I didn't hate Q as a kid, but I didn't love it. And when I was an adult, I like appreciated what John Delancey was doing a lot more. And I was like, oh, I get this now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I always thought he was funny as a kid.
Yeah.
He made me laugh, so I always liked him. But
I think maybe because again, I caught very randomly, got home the hour I had before my brothers got home from football practice and got the remote. So maybe it was like catching episodes where he was more serious and like my little kid brain couldn't deal with like Picard's facing his mortality. My little kid brain was like, where's the fun stuff? Like,
Yeah.
Taylor, is there any final thoughts you want to say about your journey through Star Trek so far? I know that you're like a little over halfway there.
I didn't get to mention Worf really that much. I'm obsessed with Worf and the Klingon stuff. So if that didn't come across, we didn't deep dive that. But I want people to know that I'm a Worf stan right now. Even though he's super problematic in many of his arcs, I really like so much about his honor and like steadfastness of a character. I think he's really interesting.
What about his parenting?
yeah.
Oh my god! Like I said, not great. He's not a good person.
I love
we're
Worf
in
as a character, as a father. Oof.
Yeah, oh my
Like-
gosh. Like I don't even think his name has been mentioned on DS9 in season 4. Like there was one episode where they were talking about kids and like Worf was like, la la la.
When O'Brien was like, some of us have family back on the station, Worf.
I was like, that was so much shade coming from O'Brien. He was like, yeah, you don't have your kid. Oh, and I still hate, like, Worf has sent Alexander to live with his poor parents. His poor parents are done, okay? Like, they did their part. They raised you. Like, they don't need to be raising your kid.
I know, yeah. A lot of DS9 is like, where's Alexander? Like,
yeah.
But the older I've gotten, I know so many people whose their parents are raising their kids instead of them. So it's like, oh, that is a pretty common thing.
I mean, it does happen. I don't know that Worf should have done that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the kid's probably getting better taken care of.
Yeah.
Worf would forget to feed him.
There's still a lot of Star Trek to come, so you don't know what's gonna happen. Like the grandparents might show up and be like, oh yeah, we don't know what happened to Alexander. We thought you had him more. You don't know what's gonna go on. So.
Taylor should
Could be
make
anything.
one wild prediction about something that's gonna happen.
Oh, that's great.
And we have to react
On the fly.
Yeah,
it was actually.
Let's do three predictions. Tell me
something from Voyager,
something from
DS9,
Voyager, something from DS9, and what do you think will happen in the next generation movie?
Oh,
This is a lot to put on me on the fly like this. I was journaling about this earlier though, like trying to collect my thoughts, and I did make some predictions, but I forgot them. So
we'll just make up. That's okay. Yeah. Like predictions, you could just like make anything. You could predict anything. So.
Fatheree,
we didn't say they had to be correct predictions.
When we were talking about DS9, I had some incorrect guesses about something related to Garrick. I don't want to. I'll sidetrack onto it, but y'all know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah.
Or you might. We'll talk about it later.
But Taylor, what did you think of?
So don't feel bad about guessing wrong.
Yeah.
But the character Anabra and Tane in the Obsidian Order that like Garrick and Odo were hanging out with when the Romulans and the Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order teamed up. And that guy Anabra and Tane, he's responsible for Garrick being tortured with that thing in his head. But what I don't know. How do you feel about like Garrick and Anabra and Tane, like whatever like their backstory? In that episode, it's told to us that Garrick used to work in the Obsidian Order for Anabra and Tane. I don't know if you suspect there's anything more to that connection.
Well, I didn't before, but now I'm like, maybe there is more to that story, and we're not done with that.
Do you want to make a prediction? Do you want to make a
based on that?
Sure. Based on anything.
Well, I'm guessing we're gonna see more of Garrick.
Well, obviously,
Tane, was that his last name?
Anabra and Tane, yeah.
Anabra and Tane. I'm
Okay.
so bad with names. I think in Deep Space Nine, so we just got to the part where we found out Gowron is a changeling. And I had thought this before, like when the Klingons started attacking Cardassia in early season 4, mid season 4, I was like, I bet that the Klingons are infiltrated, because it only makes sense that the changelings would have this like changeling attack. Like that seems like a really good way to incite a war and also like keep yourself kind of protected.
In that Anabra and Tane episode, they said after we eliminate the Cardassian and the Romulan threats, we'll have to go after the Klingons and the Federation. So.
Right. And then when they were just getting Odo his like fever reduced by joining the link or whatever, and she says like, we'll not rest until all of Cardassia is totally annihilated. Basically, she says that to Garrick, and then the Klingons have been the ones like annihilating Cardassia. That's when I was like, oh, like it's definitely them then. So I don't know, I guess looking forward for DS9 season 5 for some more changeling drama with the Klingons and stuff. And like Worf's brother, I guess, is written off, but I'm not sure if he'll come back because he was totally redone as a different character.
Yeah, they reprogram his brain. So do you think Kern will come back or not?
I don't think so. I think that'll be like we're done.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time thinking of anything radical, but
give us some Voyager predictions. Give us some Voyager predictions.
Okay, I am predicting a major character death in Voyager because we haven't. I think it's going to be either Tom or Kim, but I can't say for sure. I feel like I felt like whenever Tom was going to be the spy and he was like going to be on that other ship for that episode or whatever, and it turns out that he's just trying to weed out whoever the spy is on Voyager. I thought they were going to write him off on that episode and be like, oh, he's going to another ship, blah, blah, blah. Like, we'll never see him again. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that character.
Major character death on Voyager. And then give us a final prediction. Tell us, what do you think will happen in the next generation movie? I told you that there's 4 movies with the TNG crew. You've seen the first one with Generations. What do you think is going to happen in the next one? We're going to watch it pretty soon.
Yeah. So this one is interesting because Worf is now on Deep Space Nine. So I'm not sure if he'll be in the movie. I'm thinking they'll have to go pick him up or for some reason go to DS9 to go kidnap him or use him or whatever and get him reassigned. Because I can't imagine a TNG movie without Worf.
The way you described it, I'm imagining like that scene in like Mean Girls, or pull up in the Enterprise, like get in
yes,
shopping.
It's exactly what Picard is gonna do.
Yeah.
What is he gonna? I've never seen Mean Girls. Tell me what Picard's gonna do.
Pull up in the car. There's a very famous line: "Get in, losers. We're going shopping."
Yeah.
It's a big meme too, Fatheree.
Yes.
I haven't seen Mean Girls, but I know the meme.
Yeah. It was the line in the
meme
trailer.
Girls.
Yeah, it was even a line in the trailer. So even before Mean Girls came out, people were like quoting that.
Yeah,
and we're like almost the same age and both are girls, so we're just like millennial talking exclusively in Mean Girls quotes.
Yeah, so it's going to be the Enterprise, and they're going to swing by and pick up Worf for some reason. And then who knows? I think maybe, I mean, I guess I'm curious if it's going to follow the DS9 timeline, because if they pick up Worf, they have to acknowledge that they're in that Klingon changeling. Oh gosh, like it could really get crazy if they start merging TNG and DS9 into the movies. But I feel like they won't. I feel like it's going to be some random ass tangent for TNG.
You think it's going to be another The Whales?
Yeah, like something just totally, like they're gonna be like, actually, we can't do anything with the changelings because that all belongs to DS9, but we need Worf. So maybe we're gonna go back to 1997 instead of
and get more whales.
different whales. We don't want humpback whales. We want whale sharks, actually.
Yeah.
All right,
Or no, this time it's orcas. Okay. Well, that was a lot. Taylor, when you finish the next half of Star Trek, you'll have to come back and do this again and give us the lowdown on the second half. And we'll see which of your predictions came true and which ones did not. But that was a lot of fun. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
So I hope everyone enjoyed that, getting a word from Miss Taylor on her first half of her #Taylor's Star Trek mission. But I'm looking forward to bringing her back on the show when we finish the rest of it. We've watched a little bit more since this was recorded. So right now we're about to finish season 6 of DS9 and season 4 of Voyager. And, before long, we'll be done with those shows, and then into Enterprise, and then into Modern Trek. We're going to try to wrap up by the end of the year. So there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff coming soon. We're making those short videos on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, just talking about, every time she finishes a movie or a show, we document that. So if y'all like hearing her opinions, please be sure that you're following us on the socials. And yeah, I think that was a lot of fun to have that little that little time capsule from 3 weeks ago when she was talking about, I guess Galron's a changeling and stuff like that. It's fun to, and also some of the things that she's predicted, and it's just fun to see what comes true, what doesn't. It's a lot of fun for me to get to experience with her every day. This is part of our daily lives, so it's a lot of fun for me to get to share it with all of y'all, and I hope y'all enjoyed that. Just a reminder, we will be back in 2 weeks with another podcast episode. We are sticking with this bi-weekly distribution for a little bit longer, just until we get Lower Decks up and running in October. But then we will have weekly coverage of the final season of Lower Decks, and then plenty of Trek to talk about in 2025. There's not going to be a ton of new stuff, but there's plenty of old stuff we've never gotten around to. And I'm cooking up ideas now for things to talk about. I'm looking forward to having Joel on the show more. I'm looking forward to having Taylor on the show more. Rachel's not going anywhere. We got some plans with her, and I hope that everyone is able to come back in 2 weeks for our next episode. But until then, as always, wait, 1 moment. I do need to pull up the super chats. Bear with me for just a moment. Real quick, thank you to the super chats. Sean O'Sullivan, who said indoor equals hats off, show respect. Sorry, I got the hat on, Sean O'Sullivan, but thank you for the €2. Tom Casey, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And our associate producer, Chris Garris, thank you very much for the $20 super chat. Chris says, this is the choice that will always haunt poor Admiral Janeway. Well, thank you again, everyone, for stopping by. And please come back in 2 weeks for our next podcast episode. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.